There were a lot of headlines in the early 1990s, particularly in journals related to biblical archaeology. These headlines were about a man, a highly influential Jewish high priest from the ancient times, named in the biblical accounts with regard to Jesus' crucifixion. In Biblical Archaeological Review, 1992 September to October issue had this article, Burial Cave of the Caiaphas Family. The writer claimed this: "We discovered the final resting place of the Caiaphas family, one of whose priestly members presided at the trial of Jesus." Furthermore, the archaeologists did find the very bone box that contained the name Caiaphas. Isn't that interesting? This intriguing discovery at the tomb of this infamous high priest who incited and demanded the crucifixion of Jesus Christ is indeed a monumental finding that has huge implications for biblical history and to faith. So in this brief segment, we shall go over the historical circumstances in which Caiaphas became a high priest, and we shall also situate his confrontation with Jesus that led to his eventual crucifixion. And we shall delve into the exciting discovery of the Caiaphas family tomb complex, his own ossuary, or a bone box that contained the very bones of this sensational Jewish high priest from 2,000 years ago. Let's get ready for an exciting journey through history, Bible, and archaeology. Welcome to Discern Scripture YouTube channel. We post videos regularly on various topics that are related to the biblical world, its history, and its present relevance. We would really appreciate if you subscribe and help us reach a wider audience. Now, let's get on with the video. Caiaphas in history. What does history tell us about his tenure as a high priest? The Jewish high priest Caiaphas belonged to the first century Jewish sect known as the Sadducees. Old English word Sadduceas come from late Latin word, which comes from Greek Sadokios, which comes in turn from Hebrew Sidoki. They were the descendants of Sadok, the powerful priest who managed the worship and sacrifices in times of the United Monarchy under King David. Sadducees like Caiaphas wielded enormous political and religious influence on the affairs of the Jews. The Sadducees were active during the Second Temple period, around 2nd century BC to 1st century AD. They were part of the wealthy aristocratic class and often held powerful positions, including roles as priests and members of the Sanhedrin, the Jewish ruling council. Theologically, the Sadducees differed from other groups like the Pharisees. They accepted only the written Torah, the first 5 books of Moses, as authoritative and rejected oral traditions. They also denied beliefs in the resurrection of the dead, angels, and an afterlife, ideas that the Pharisees strongly supported. Because they collaborated closely with the Roman authorities and focused on maintaining the temple rituals, their influence declined sharply after the catastrophic destruction of the Second Temple in AD 70. After that devastating event, the Sadducees as a movement eventually disappeared from Jewish history. The Jewish high priest Caiaphas is mentioned in 2 ancient documents, first in the New Testament and second in the writings of Jewish Roman historian Flavius Josephus. Josephus provides clear information around the events of his appointment as a high priest and later his removal from the office. First, the appointment of Caiaphas as high priest. The period around AD 10 saw several high priests removed after a short period of time in the priestly office. It was a time of turmoil and instability. Under Roman rule, the high priesthood, a crucial religious and political role, became subject to Roman governors' whims, often leading to frequent changes. High priests were appointed and removed by Roman authorities, sometimes based on who was willing to pay the most in bribe or who could best navigate the political landscape. This resulted in many short tenures for high priests. The office itself became more about politics than religious leadership. This was the context in which Caiaphas became a high priest. In AD 18, the Roman governor Valerius Gratus removed Simon, son of Caiaphas, after a year of him being in the priestly office, and appointed Caiaphas to serve in this role instead. This is what Jewish Roman historian Josephus says in his work, Antiquity of the Jews, book 18.2.2. upon whose death Tiberius Nero succeeded. He was now the third emperor, and he sent Valerius Gratus to be the procurator of Judea and to succeed Annius Rufus. This man deprived Annaeus of the high priesthood and appointed Ishmael, the son of Phabi, to be high priest. He also deprived him in a little time and ordained Eleazar, the son of Ananus, who had been high priest before, to be high priest, which office when he had held for a year, Gratus deprived him of it and gave the high priesthood to Simon, the son of Chemithus. And when he had possessed that dignity no longer than a year, Joseph Caiaphas was made his successor. When Gratus had done these things, he went back to Rome, after he had tarried in Judea 11 years, when Pontius Pilate came as his successor. According to Josephus, his given name was Joseph, who was also called Caiaphas. Caiaphas had a powerful father-in-law named Ananus. Ananus was a powerful man who had served as the high priest earlier from AD 6 to AD 15. When Jesus visited the temple with his parents when he was 12 years old, Ananias was a high priest at that time. Even after Ananias was removed from his office, he retained considerable influence in the Jewish religious and political circles. 5 of his sons and his son-in-law Caiaphas all served as Jewish high priests at various times. This is reflected in the fact that after Jesus was arrested, he was first taken to Ananias in John chapter 18, verse 13, who was not even in office at that time. Only after that, he was taken to Caiaphas, who was actual high priest at the time of Jesus' trial. This is what we know about Caiaphas' removal from office. Caiaphas served as a high priest for close to 2 decades, from AD 18 to AD 37. When Gratus was succeeded by Pontius Pilate, Caiaphas remained in office and seemed to have enjoyed the pinnacle of his influence during these years. Both he and Pontius Pilate were eventually removed from office by Lucius Vitellius, the governor of Syria, in AD 37. Regarding the removal of Caiaphas from office, this is what Josephus says in the Antiquities, book 18, chapter 14, verse 3. Besides which, he also deprived Joseph, who was also called Caiaphas, of the high priesthood, and appointed Jonathan, the son of Ananus, the former high priest, to succeed him, after which he took his journey back to Antioch. By comparing the timelines, we can establish that Caiaphas named by Josephus as serving the high priest in Jerusalem, and the Caiaphas described as holding the same role in gospel accounts in Matthew chapter 26, verse 3, or Luke chapter 3, verse 2, John 18, 13, must be one and the same person. So we have a perfect correlation between the biblical account and the account of the ancient historian, Josephus. Now let's turn our attention to Caiaphas at the trial and crucifixion of Jesus Christ. The original plot to arrest and kill Jesus was hatched in the home of the high priest Joseph Caiaphas. Matthew records this. Then the chief priests and the elders of the people assembled in the palace of the high priest, whose name was Caiaphas, and they plotted to arrest Jesus in some sly way and kill him. But not during the feast, they said, or there may be a riot among the people. Matthew chapter 26, verses 3 to 5. While the chief priests and the elders discussed how to get rid of Jesus to protect their position, Caiaphas said, "It is better for you that one man die for the people than the whole nation perish." In John chapter 11, verse 50. Ironically, he unwillingly prophesied that Jesus would die for the people. Despite their hesitancy to move against Jesus during the Passover, they eventually decided to take the risk after Judas presented the opportunity to betray Jesus to them, according to Matthew chapter 26, verses 14 to 16. Perhaps they believed that with an inside man, they could arrest Jesus quietly and avoid a riot among the people. They did succeed in arresting Jesus at night with the help of Judas. Jesus was eventually taken to the palace of Caiaphas for the first of 2 primary trials, a religious trial before the Jewish ruling council, which was followed by a Roman civil trial before Pontius Pilate. At his religious trial, Jesus was accused of numerous things by contradictory witnesses, but he remained silent. Finally, the high priest Caiaphas spoke. "I charge you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." "You have said so," Jesus replied. "But I say to all of you, from now on, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "He has spoken blasphemy. Why do we need any more witnesses? Look, now you have heard the blasphemy. What do you think? He is worthy of death," they answered. The Jewish council that gathered in the house of Caiaphas agreed with Caiaphas' conclusion. It is before Caiaphas that Jesus made the startling claim that he was the Son of Man who would come on the clouds of heaven, and being seated at the right hand of God, the one who would receive worship of all nations. He was claiming to be God before the high priest himself. Caiaphas might have felt triumphant for effectively trapping Jesus with his judicial questioning. He tore his clothes and cried blasphemy. Just as they planned, he pronounced Jesus worthy of death on account of blasphemy. Then the Jewish leaders led him to the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, to request their sentence to be carried out. Jewish leaders were the architects of crucifixion. The Romans were their executioners who did the job for them. Caiaphas was the center of the conspiracy. He made sure that this Jesus problem was once and for all dealt with the most cruel punishment for the outrageous Galilean who dared to claim himself to be God in front of the high priest himself. Now let's turn our attention to Caiaphas' tomb and his ossuary and its significance. Jewish high priest Caiaphas made global news headlines again 20 centuries after his death in the first century. In 1990, a tomb was discovered during the construction work in the Peace Forest of Jerusalem. Archaeologists were called in and excavated a tomb in which they found 6 intact ossuaries and fragments of 6 other ossuaries. Ossuaries are limestone boxes used to inter or bury the bones of the deceased after the body had decomposed. Based on the ossuaries themselves, as well as the pottery, oil lamp, a glass vessel, and a coin of Herod Agrippa minted around AD 37 to 44, experts dated the tomb to the first century. One of the ossuaries was more ornate than the rest and was decorated with recipes and floral motifs. On the back and on one end, inscriptions read, "Joseph, son of Caiaphas." The name Joseph, son of Caiaphas, does not necessarily mean Caiaphas was Joseph's father. Caiaphas may designate simply the family name. Therefore, the inscription has to be understood as Joseph of the family of Caiaphas. For example, Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, is simply called Judas Iscariot. Joseph, son of Caiaphas, is called Joseph Caiaphas. That's how Roman historian Josephus addresses him. Now, here is a description of the Caiaphas ossuary. The bones from 6 different individuals were found inside this ornate ossuary. 2 infants, a child from 2 to 5 years, a teenage boy, an adult woman, and a male who was estimated to be around 60 years old. Many scholars believe this ossuary belonged to Joseph Caiaphas, the high priest who presided over the religious trial of Jesus. So the bones of the 60-year-old man the ossuary contains may be the very remains of high priest Caiaphas. A second, less ornate ossuary discovered in the tomb also bore the inscription with the name of Caiaphas. It contained the bones of 5 individuals, but none of them were an elderly male. We can effectively rule out that ossuary did not belong to the high priest Caiaphas. The inscription on the ossuary is considered a rare and significant piece of evidence linking a historical biblical figure to a specific archaeological find. The ossuary sheds light on the burial practices in Jerusalem during the first century, offering insight into the customs of elite families at that time. The discovery helps illuminate the Jewish elite's role in Jerusalem during the time of Roman rule, including their influence over religious and political matters. For Christians, this ossuary reinforces the historical grounding of the Passion narrative in the Gospels. While many elements of the life of Jesus are debated among scholars, the existence of the burial box associated with Caiaphas provides tangible evidence of people involved in the New Testament events. For long, critical and skeptical scholars raised several questions whether Jesus' trial before Caiaphas was a historical fact or a theological narrative. The ossuary provides physical evidence of the figure that involved in the very trial of Jesus and his crucifixion. Here is my closing reflection. The ossuary of Caiaphas, one of the most decorated ossuaries yet discovered in Israel, indicates his family's wealth. Though he had great wealth, great power, and political influence, he missed the most important thing of all. He missed identifying his Messiah. He lost his opportunity to lead the Jewish nation to its Messiah. His leadership was marked with unparalleled spiritual failure in that sense. Ever since Caiaphas misdiagnosed Jesus as a blasphemer, Jews continue to falter along the error of Caiaphas, not clearly seeing who Jesus is in reality. He is God incarnate in flesh. One of the greatest ironies of history is that the tomb of Caiaphas, the man who sentenced Jesus to death, has been found, along with his ossuary and his dried, rotten bones. While the tomb of Jesus, whom he sentenced, remained empty. He is not here, he is risen. The message of resurrection became a cornerstone of the Christian faith. Jewish high priest Caiaphas could not extinguish the flames of gospel revolution. Jesus Christ arose on the third day, breaking the Roman seal. The kingdom of God triumphed and trumped over the tyranny and evil. Christian movement burst forth right before Caiaphas. Apostles proclaimed the gospel on the day of Pentecost, continually preached the message of resurrection of Jesus Christ in the very city of Jerusalem, where Jesus was crucified by the incitement of high priest Caiaphas. Even to this day, the message of Christ's resurrection reminds us and inspires us of this important truth. Via Crucis, via Lucis. The way of the cross is a way of light and of victory. Thank you for watching this video. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe and support our channel. Click on the bell icon so that you can get notification whenever we post a new video. Also, leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. God bless you all. Shalom.